For a sport that is often deep in more than a few controversies at a time, Formula One still manages to be pretty savvy with their financial penalties. Over the course of F1's existence, the FIA has been pretty quick and somewhat unpredictable with their fines. The constructors and drivers aren't the only parties getting the cold shoulder from the FIA. In this list, you'll find entire circuits or hosting countries receiving fines for breaches spanning dishonesty and fraudulent activities. If you've been feeling a little underwhelmed by the FIA's reactions to recent questionable moments, this should serve as a reminder that F1's governing body has the power to turn things up to the max. 1. Ferrari for the 2002 Austrian Grand Prix incident, $1 million. The Scuderia's team might be the oldest team in F1, but that doesn't exempt them from the rules. The 2002 Austrian Grand Prix is an example of a moment when the iconic red team could only sit back and accept the punishment for flouting the rules. The incident behind the fine occurred during the final lap of the Austrian Grand Prix, where Rubens Barrichello and Michael Schumacher swapped positions while exiting the final corner, effectively giving away the win to Schumacher. This decision to slow down was a direct order from team boss Jean Todt. These types of orders are generally frowned upon, but they weren't against any rules. The actual fine came from the way the podium ceremonies were conducted by Ferrari drivers. The FIA criticized Schumacher's decision to share the top step of the podium with Barrichello, a Brazilian citizen, even while the German national anthem played in the background. He did this with both drivers at the end of the race, even when the other anthems played. According to the FIA, each team has the responsibility to ensure that drivers respect the stage's procedures in order to prevent any controversies or incidents of disrespect. For being found guilty of breaching the World Sporting Regulation, the team, along with Schumacher and Barrichello, were awarded a fine of $1 million. 2. Organizers of the 2005 Turkish Grand Prix, $5 million. The 2006 Turkish Grand Prix was an event that went entirely as expected, racing-wise. There were no incidents of cheating on track or suspicions of foul play. So what could have occurred to warrant a whopping $5 million fine? Well, if you're a country hosting a Grand Prix, it's best to be 100% certain of the titles being held by the national representatives slated to present the trophies. For the Turkish GP, the offense basically boils down to a misrepresentation of the person presenting the award. Turkish Cypriot leader Mehmet Ali Talat was wrongly introduced as the president of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus on a stage that was being broadcast on TVs locally and worldwide. Naturally, the Cypriot community in Greece was not too happy about this title change. The FIA was equally critical of it, particularly then FIA President Max Mosley, who declared that it was a violation of F1's political neutrality. The World Motorsport Council called the Turkish sport authorities and race organizers to answer the allegations concerning their violation of the FIA rules, along with other sporting regulations. From the meetings and deliberations, the FIA concluded that it was an opportunistic moment to phrase his title in that manner, not a premeditated offense. With all the craziness that happened related to this GP, let's not forget that Felipe Massa was the race winner after delivering an amazing performance in the Turkish GP. 3. Aston Martin for the 2021 cost cap breach, $450,000. Aston Martin, formerly known as Racing Point, is starting to become a little familiar with the FIA's checkbook. The team was ordered to pay a $473,000 fine for their brake ducts that were eerily similar to the Mercedes cars from 2019. Teams are forbidden from blatantly copying designs, and they are called to defend the reasoning behind these design choices. If the FIA concludes that it was copied, a fine is issued. In the 2022 season, the team once again had to face the FIA for breaching the new financial regulations, particularly the rules for the 2021 season. As the first year of the cost cap, 2021 ensured that teams were limited with the amount of money they could spend on performance-related developments. In 2022, the FIA revealed that they were done investigating how teams adhered to these rules, and it was concluded that some teams did not stick to the regulations. Technically, only one team broke the spending limit. We'll discuss this soon. Aston Martin was fined for procedural breach. In other words, their bookkeeping and reports on spending were riddled with corrections and inconsistencies. For their procedural breach, they were offered an agreement to accept that they had committed this offense. The team accepted, and they received a $450,000 fine along with some unreported costs to the FIA. If Aston Martin protested this, the fine could have been much higher. That amount of money for the F1 team is usually not worth the trouble of a protest. 4. Red Bull Racing for the 2021 cost cap breach, $7 million. Now, this is the type of fine that can ruin anyone's day. Aston Martin was only found guilty of a procedural breach, so there was actually one team found in excess of the annual spending limit that was placed at $140 million. Here's the kicker. Red Bull were found to have committed a minor overspend breach, bringing their total spending costs to an excess of $2.3 million. This was concluded after a long investigation into the account owned by the team in 2021. For the number crunchers out there, this is basically 1.6% more than the proper amount. How this came to be was due to Red Bull incorrectly adjusting and excluding certain costs. Were catering services, clerical errors, some travel costs, social security contributions, and the cost of maintenance. Another interesting part of this case comes from the FIA. They acknowledged the fact that Red Bull should have correctly applied their tax credit. If they did so, the fine would have equated to just $470,000. In addition to the $7 million setback, Red Bull also got a 10% reduction in wind tunnel development time for the 2023 season. This makes it the second highest penalty in F1 history. 5. McLaren's possession of Ferrari's technical information, $100 million. Yes, you heard that right. In 2007, McLaren incurred the full wrath of the FIA for something that was basically considered as treason in Formula 1. Considering that this happened in 2007, it would have been hard to see them bounce back, but this event didn't hurt their pockets enough to ruin their championship in 2008. It did create some rifts within the team, causing things to get progressively worse, with drama emerging far more than anyone had expected. So, why $100 million? Well, a McLaren employee possessed detailed documentation related to the designs of Ferrari's F2007 car. The matter was brought to light when the employee's wife took the documentation to a photocopying shop in the UK. An employee at the shop was pretty suspicious and decided to contact Ferrari's Maranello factory. Meanwhile, the rivalry between both teams became heated on track as the off-track event began to unfold. McLaren's internal investigation concluded that there was no wrongdoing, go figure, but the matter was reopened after the heated exchange between McLaren's driver Fernando Alonso and McLaren team boss Ron Dennis. FIA President Max Mosley summoned McLaren's driver Hamilton, Alonso, and test driver Pedro de la Rosa. They were granted immunity in exchange for relevant information. After the investigation, the drivers were allowed to keep participating in the Drivers' Championship, while McLaren was disqualified from the Constructors' Championship and hit the king of all racing fines at $100 million. Bonus: US F1, $326,000. US F1 is something you may not have heard of, and there's a good reason for that. This not-so-subtly named team was an American organization's attempt to make their mark in Formula 1. Considering the sheer viewership numbers for the sport, F1 sees a lot of interest across different organizations worldwide. As one of the incoming constructors for the 2010 World Championship, US F1 was expected to enter and participate in races. However, the team was liquidated before the first race of the season could even commence. Because of this, the FIA issued a fine of $326,000 and banned the organization from ever participating in an FIA-governed competition in the future. This essentially meant that they were going to have to pay for wasting the FIA's time and resources. To make it sting even worse, the US F1 team also had to pay for the FIA's costs related to this disciplinary procedure. The team had attempted to argue against the FIA's decision by blaming the negative media coverage from then F1 boss Bernie Ecclestone. In response, the FIA ruled that there was no evidence to support it. Are you a fan of Max Verstappen? Get ready to be amazed. In this video, we're revealing 10 things you never knew about the F1 prodigy. Don't miss out on this exclusive look into the life of one of the most exciting drivers in F1. Click play now and get ready to be stunned by what you didn't even know about Max Verstappen.